Okay, Chris again. Let's talk about squad formations and um, how we're going to make these look better. Because last video we talked about how tiny those bombers were and all the coolness of them we couldn't even really see. That was no good. So what are we going to do about it? Well, we're able to define as many arbitrary um, formations as we want. There is no particular efficiency hit to defining more of them. We could have a separate formation for every individual type of ship if we felt like it. That would be a monumental waste of time, in my opinion, but we could do it. It wouldn't hurt anything. Um, by default, if you look in the game data configuration folder, there's a balance underscore granularity folder, and then Keith has some vanilla granularities defined. Inside this, you'll see things like swarmer, mild swarmer, blah, blah, blah. And it has things like visuals, idle formation, and then it's got a location that it's pulling the formation from. So what we need to do is we need to look at our, I'm in the wrong folder here. What we need to do is we need to look at our bomber. We need to see what this is assigned to. So this is assigned to mild low cap. Mild low cap. So it should have 10 squads or 10 squads per cap, 100 ships per that. So I guess it's 10 ships within there. I'm not sure if that's quite defined the way it's supposed to be, but at any rate, we're going to infer that there's 10 ships within the squad. And the formation that it's using is something called mild low cap 2 bomber 10 prefab. Now we could there's a couple of things we could do. We could just adjust the granularity definition here, because do we really want anything in this particular formation? Or we can copy this definition to the bomber itself, and the bomber will use whatever we replace this with instead. It's going to be a case-by-case basis. A lot of times you're going to want to adjust a whole bunch of things at once, which is why we have things like the granularity definitions. In some cases, you're going to have a ship that's so special that you're going to want to do something just for it. And even if it's not just for it alone, it's just for a small group of them. Maybe you build out a prefab, you build out a formation and you just copy this to a couple of them. Or you can take the granularity and mid-low cap, vertical, and then define something different. And then on the ones that are going to use that, you assign the vertical one instead. So the system for essentially modding is extremely flexible. But first of all, let's go ahead and start creating a new formation. This is going to have 10 ships in it, and all we're doing is we're assigning the orientation of where the ships are going to sit in the formation. So right now they're in kind of a wing sort of a shape, which is neat, but they don't have enough room. So we're going to do something else. So if this is now in the AIW2 modding and GUI project, if you click under Arc and Squads, you will see there's a squad setups scene that you can open. and there's a grids subfolder underneath that, which has a bunch of prefabs, and these things are all simply, they have just cubes in there because that's a simple way to visualize stuff. They don't technically need any object whatsoever because these are formations for within a squad within that ring. Not not a formation of multiple squads together, but a formation of ships inside the squad. And so this defines how they sit. So we've got 2 Bomber 10 right here. Let's double click that. So this is what we've got at the moment, is this. Now I'm going to make a duplicate of this, Control D, and drag this just off to the side over here so I have some room to work. One of the things to remember is that this was, these were too small to see, the bombers were, and the individual wings here were just a little bit on the too wide side. They went out a little bit too far. So let's do this. First of all, you click it twice and then click that one as well. All right, so it's 6 and 10. Just bring that in just a hair. 10, bring that in just a hair. Not actually going to use this, but so there's this one. We're going to use this as kind of a guide for how big can we get. I'm going to duplicate that and I'm going to come up. Just going to use the other one as an example. Now, what I'm going to do here, I've selected all the sub objects, not the parent, just the sub objects. So I'm going to scale these individually, not as a whole. So you'll notice they're not moving their positions. They're just getting bigger as they are. So I'm making these, heck, let's make them twice as big. And now you can see they're all over top of each other. That's a good indicator of what our general problem is here. If we make them bigger, then we can't see them. So now what I want to do is I want to add some verticality to this. So we're going to go down on this one, go down on this one. That works. This one will come up on. This one will stay more in the middle. Actually, this, and I bet this one, yeah. There we go. Just drag those down so they stay even. And then take these two. I think that'll work. Kinda, sorta. Maybe if I bring this down even further. No, just gonna bring it back a little, just a tad. All right, and then I've got these two, not those two. Got these two, and I guess I'll bring them up a little. Okay, so now what I've got is this thing, which looks kind of funky. Bring that down a little more. What this will let me do, though, is this will let me double the size of my bombers. We should be able to see them better. In theory, I could probably triple the size of them. So let's got them all selected again. You can see on the right there, I've gone up to right about 3 times as large. So I think I can bring this forward a little. can take this to the side a little, this to the side a little, these two, bring them down. We have plenty of room down always. So if you go up too much, you run into the gimbal, the little icon. If you go down, it's not a worry. And I'm going to take these two wing ones and move them back a little. Ooh, boy. I want the blue bar, not the other. Move them back a little, move them in a little. Now those are the high point. And then take these two, bring them back a little. It's a weird formation. But my point wasn't trying to be pretty. My point was trying to make it fit and trying to show some verticality and trying to show some kind of creativity there. So now I'm bringing this down to the other one, and I can see if this fits within here, and it doesn't really. If I rotate it this way, that goes too far back, and because it's a circle, so this goes a little bit too wide. So, all right, we will make our changes. I will bring this in a little, this in a little, and then these two will bring down and in. So now, when I put this down here, hit E for rotating. That pretty much fits. I can always increase the radius very slightly if I'm not happy with this. Although, let's do this. Just shift those back just slightly. Shift these forward just slightly. And already that's going to be happier. All right. Now when it's just boxes, this looks a little weird. But, yeah. So I'm going to call this 2 bomber vertical 3x, meaning 3x scale with 10 ships. And I'm going to drag that in there. And that is my formation. The distance off the ground in here does not matter to my recollection. Save all assets, build Windows asset. Oh, darn it. I missed a step. So now it's building and I gotta wait. Maybe I can hit cancel. I don't think it'll listen though. Oh, it did. Look at that. All right. So it should be an AIW2 squads. So I'm just going to do a quick select all, make sure all of these are. AIW2 squads. You couldn't see it. It was hanging off the bottom, but selected. Hit save all. And just hit save on the scene. Convinced it's saved. All right. Build Windows Asset Bundle. So my 2 bomber vertical 3x10. So 2 bomber vertical 3x10. For the mild low cap in general, anything that's using that, it will now be in this new kind of wacky formation of mine. However, the ships are not going to be any bigger. They're still going to be however big they are um, defined in the other project, which is nice because the formations, the boxes, again, the only thing that matters from it are their position and actually the rotation too. You can have things that are rotated away from the center line, which would be useful for things like minefields, turret clusters, things of that nature. But for any ships, you're going to want them all facing the same direction, or it's going to look really weird. Um, and so now I can see these things are in that formation, but they're not any bigger. So fine, I guess. But now the trick is they can be bigger. So next step is we go back to our Unity prep project. I made it so that these can be up to 3 times bigger and not collide with one another. All right, cool. So now I'm just going to take 93 there and then just do times 3. It gives me 279. Obviously, it stretched it. And then on the other 2 axes, do the same thing. And then drag this forward. Let's see how this does. Save apply prefab. When I look, oh, what did it say? Okay, yeah, good. When I look at the bomber here, 279 is the scale. Hooray. Arkin, save all assets. Arkin, build Windows Asset Bundle. It will build just the bombers section. The video didn't freeze, it's just slow. This is a good example of where you're going to want to schedule your time appropriately, such as, making a number of ships and having your best guess on them and getting them all in at once, testing them all at once, and then making changes in a batch and then sending them all. Because if you go one ship by one ship and send this stuff over, it's going to be darn slow. I'm doing one ship at a time right now, so I can do a straightforward example, but trying to do one ship at a time from end to end with testing is not going to be the best. So, hey, look at that. You can actually see these things. They're still very small, but that is more or less by design. These are small fleet ships. Let's put one over. Let's put a couple over here by the right near. These don't feel too big to me. Somebody else may disagree. I don't know, but I'd gotten a lot of feedback that people didn't like how small the ships felt. So now we've got this formation here, and they're able to kind of come out of it a little bit, I guess. if I really work at it, I can maybe get them to overlap slightly, but realistically, clustering these all up is not. Whoa, boy, where are you headed? Where are you headed? It's too close and therefore moved away further. So realistically, kind of clustering all these up doesn't feel as convoluted as you might think. They're not overlapping in a way that feels negative to me. They don't. These look like bees. It's kind of funny. The formation's a little nonsensical the way that it looks here, but somebody with more military pedigree, let's say, than me can probably do something a lot more interesting with it. For instance, you got a lot of room vertically. There's no reason not to use it. Going back into free look mode, if you look at this, this is how much space there is between the topmost of these guys and the gimbal. And we've got plenty of space going down as well. And we're not even really using the mid plane very much. We're there's like one ship on the mid plane, and it's the lead ship. And so, could do something that was practically like a wing vertically. The ships could be much larger. I mean, there's a variety of formats that could be used here. And that could really help express the character of the ships. I also want to note it's possible to have different formations on the human side versus the AI side. I think that's getting into overkill for right this second, but it is something that's worth thinking about. And we can scale up our ships so that we get a sense for being able to actually see them when we're playing. This being 3 times larger than what it was, this feels so much better. And I can still zoom in and see them, really closely. And I don't feel like this diminishes the feeling of scale of the really, really large ships. Somebody else may disagree, I don't know. But just feels like these are more substantial. This, in some ways, is a little more Star Wars-esque in terms of scales. Star Trek mostly doesn't have teeny tiny little fighters and big old ships. So I kind of go to Star Wars as my go-to visual reference for when you've got the big stuff versus the little stuff and how it should feel. So I think that's basically it for the grids. I'm going to check that one in. That's better than what it was because we can at least see the ships. But we could use more in the way of the grids, the squads in general. And this is something that modders or other players with the visual instinct can easily come in and do because it requires no code changes. It requires only a change in the XML, and it requires the Unity editor and making the actual array of cubes here in the modding project. In order to scale up the ships, that is something that an Arkin staff member or contractor is going to have to do. But I think that we can make a pretty good effort at getting ships scaled better on our own without needing modders to help with that. And that's part of why I did this video as part of the let's finish implementing the ships thing. Because when a ship is being called implemented, and I can go ahead and check that off now on my list here. I'm going to say into game, yes. When I'm checking that off as yes, I want to know that even if the formation is kind of questionable, it at least fits in the radius, and I can see the ships. Like, people aren't going to be complaining, "What's that speck in the distance?" You know what I'm saying? And so if we've met those two requirements already, then the formations can easily be tweaked by players later, and we don't have to worry about the ship sizes because they're already bigger. Um, the I had one other note on this subject, and I just flew out of my brain. Oh, you know, I don't think that across the board we're going to want to go 3 times larger. For the really little things, that is probably what we're going to want to wind up doing. For some of the stuff that's already bigger, I think we're going to wind up seeing kind of a normalization where the bigger stuff doesn't really get much bigger, but the really little stuff does get bigger. And maybe the medium stuff maybe gets a little bit bigger, but not nearly 3 times bigger, So right now, our sliding scale went from absolutely minuscule to absolutely ridiculously gigantic. And the ridiculously gigantic wound up looking like, something you can see really well. And the ridiculously tiny went to looking like specks. And we want to basically foreshorten that scale. That's been made very clear by players that they feel that way. So, and my very last thing that I have to do, which I forgot, is I have to take out test spawn for player, and that is everything for this one. Yep, all checks done. Thank you for watching.